Demoted at this age? You must be really incompetent. I, working in the HR department of a cosmetics company, am suddenly ordered to be demoted by the president, Tammy. Shocked by the unexpected notice, I received pitiful looks from my colleagues, as I was being sent to the infamous branch known for its rampant harassment. The main culprit, Director Mary, had her eyes on me, leading to my days being filled with disdain. Even your wife is amount to nothing. A little while after being demoted, my wife suddenly visited the office. Contrary to her intention of a surprise visit, I was anxious about whether Director Mary would find out. And unfortunately, we bumped into her at the worst possible time. Upon realizing she was my wife, Director Mary laughed mockingly. However, when my wife turned around, Mary looked shocked, as if seeing something terrifying. I'm Ken, 61 years old. I work in the HR department of a cosmetics company, managing office supplies, arranging contractors, and handling document management for meeting materials. I also create a company newsletter, focusing on who excelled that month and paying attention to the content and design of the articles. As a result, I was well received by the employees. Despite my positive performance outputs, I received a transfer order, the true purpose of which was to demote me. One day, I was summoned by President Tammy, and to my surprise, she served me a transfer notice. Let me make it clear, I haven't caused any problems at the company. I work diligently and seriously every day. However, President Tammy didn't provide a detailed reason. Why am I being demoted? You are directed to perform your task at the specified branch. That's it, she commanded in a calm tone, and I wasn't given any more information. During her younger days, she worked as a cosmetic salesperson at a department store. Afterwards, she started her own business and has since raised the cosmetics company as its president to this day. The products she produces are all popular, receiving a flood of orders even from overseas. Reportedly, President Tammy has assets worth around $13 million. She is not only a wealthy individual owning several properties in New York City, but also a shrewd executive who focuses on talent development. Moreover, she is known to be relentless against anyone causing harm to the company. Despite her ruthless side, she has a keen eye for people, resulting in many employees admiring her. I am one of those who deeply respect her. So, when President Tammy suddenly ordered my demotion, I thought it was a dream. Please, at least tell me why. Did I do something wrong? Faced with my persistence, President Tammy showed a stern expression. No, you've been doing very well. That's exactly why I want you to go to the branch. Then, President Tammy beckoned me closer and whispered in my ear. I was taken aback by her words, unable to respond immediately. But seeing her serious gaze, I was convinced of her sincerity. President Tammy, looking me straight in the eyes, said, "This is a matter concerning our company. Accept this transfer order. Also, this is a remembrance gift from me." She pulled an envelope from her desk drawer and handed it to me. It felt like a stack of bills, but there was a certain rigid quality to it. I accepted it and tucked it away. Understood. I respectfully accept the demotion. Thus, effective 2 weeks later, my transfer from the headquarters to the branch office was finalized. Later, when I returned to the HR department and informed my colleagues about the transfer, everyone was extremely surprised. Wait, Ken, are they sure? What are they doing? Yes, they are. Even at my age, I never think of it. I know President Tammy does take bold actions at times, but this is totally unexpected. Indeed, they couldn't hide their confusion at the sudden news. But what's done is done. As I was thinking of turning over my duties to my colleagues, I became confident for the smooth transition considering their capabilities. By the way, which branch are you going to? When I asked by one of them, I answered with the address of the branch I was being transferred to. It's a regional office located west of New York. However, when I mentioned the address, everyone's faces suddenly tensed up. What's wrong? Why such scared faces? Ken, don't you know? That branch is rumored to be in a really bad state right now. Their words made me tilt my head in confusion. Having worked at the headquarters for so long, I was out of touch with the rumors and stories of other branches. The employees exchanged glances and looked at me with sympathy. Being stared at like that, A wave of nameless anxiety slowly started to wash over me. Feeling scared of the silence, I laughed it off. Hey, don't make me anxious. It's not like I'm going to a war zone. Well, it's just a rumor, but since a certain intimidating person arrived there, the sales have supposedly skyrocketed. The way the employee said it, with darkened eyes, seemed to ominously hint at my future. From their discussion, it appeared that the branch I was heading to was surrounded by unsettling rumors. I heard that Director Mary is behind the skyrocketing sales performances. Increasing sales is good, isn't it? What's the problem? As the sales increased, so did the turnover rate. This woman, Mary, was promoted from manager to director last year. Once she started play a role there, the turnover rate shot up. I couldn't see the connection between her and the high turnover rate, but the thought of going to a workplace surrounded by such ominous rumors was unsettling. So, the president is sending me to such a workplace. I remembered my conversation with President Tammy. In case of any trouble, I'll have to rely on her. 2 weeks later, after completing the handover, I was transferred to the branch, sent off by my colleagues. With a feeling of uncertainty about what lay ahead, I arrived at the new workplace only to face an unexpected situation. Wait, I'm in sales now. Despite being originally scheduled for the administrative department, I was moved to sales due to a shortage of staff. The employee filed an immediate resignation. You're older, Ken, so we will go easy on you. I was persuaded by a sales employee and reluctantly agreed. Does President Tammy know about this change in assignment? No, it's just our circumstance. We don't need to report such things. Such an unreasonable change in plans was never a thing back at the headquarters. Changes were always reported in advance, and we never had any trouble because of that. It seems the way things are done here is completely different from the headquarters. Moreover, the atmosphere of this workplace is nothing like the headquarters. Since I arrived here, I've passed by several employees, all with gloomy expressions. In contrast, the staff at the headquarters are lively and spirited, creating a vibrant and comfortable working environment. However, the atmosphere here is heavy and overall gloomy. This doesn't bode well. Muttering to myself, I was then led to the sales department by an employee. As soon as I entered, I heard shouting. Why can't you do such a simple thing? I turned towards the source of the voice in surprise and saw a man, who seemed to be the manager, yelling at a young employee. The young one kept apologizing and was on the verge of tears. The manager continued his tirade, worsening the department's atmosphere. Unable to stand it, I whispered to the employee who was guiding me. Hey, there's no need to yell like that, is there? But the employee, seemingly accustomed to this, sighed and said lethargically, there's no helping it. It's all per the director's instructions. The word director made me anxious, knowing what I had heard from the HR department. Wait, the director. Director Mary. She's on a business trip right now, so in her absence, the manager is instructed to educate the subordinates like this. It seemed the manager's harsh treatment of the young employee was under the directives of Director Mary. What is he following such instructions when she's not even here? When I instinctively asked the employee about the situation, he looked down with a somber expression. Well, it's a bit difficult here. He spoke evasively, glancing around nervously. Before I could ask further, he initiated a change in topic. By the way, I was supposed to hand over some supplies for you, Ken. Let's go to the storage room. Yes. Though I was puzzled by his sudden diversion, I followed him to the storage room. Once inside, instead of fetching supplies, he began speaking in a low voice. Phew, it should be safe to talk here. Safe to talk about what? I was completely lost, feeling a mix of anxiety and growing irritation, eager for him to reveal what he was hiding. Sensing my impatience, he finally spoke up. The truth is, under Director Mary's orders, cameras have been installed in the office. Cameras? It's not unusual to have security cameras. But the employee silently shook his head. What he revealed next left me speechless. The cameras Director Mary installed weren't just any cameras, they were pet cameras. These are popular in households with pets, allowing owners to check on their pets while away. Director Mary had them installed to keep an eye on the employees, even in her absence, to ensure they were working properly. The employee explained that anyone found not following Director Mary's instructions would be summoned later and reprimanded. Even in her absence, they felt constantly monitored by her, leading to a pervasive sense of surveillance. This stress had caused health issues, and just this month, 3 employees had left, with one still recuperating at home. Hearing this, my anger was uncontrollable. Pet cameras. What does she think employees are? Well, since the pet cameras were installed, there have been fewer people slacking off, and the department has been meeting its targets. So, that's why the branch's sales have improved, I realized instantly. But at what cost? The employees, including him, seemed mentally and physically strained, with a vacant look in their eyes. Having arrived at the branch, I was working at a desk provided to me, a grimy second-hand piece of furniture. If I leaned on it slightly, it wobbled, reminding me of the uncomfortable table seats commonly found in cafes, making me frown. But showing dissatisfaction might be captured by the pet camera and later used as a pretext for Director Mary to lecture me. Observing my surroundings while working, I noticed everyone silently focusing on their tasks. Those going out for field work left swiftly, and some answered phone calls on the first ring. Director Mary's strict management ensured above-average focus on work, but the stress of constant surveillance was immense. However, this surveillance was limited to the sales where Director Mary had her influence. The only times one was allowed to leave their desk were for lunch and bathroom breaks. Even bathroom use was regulated, restricted to only twice a day. Hearing such unreasonable rules, I harbored internal dissatisfaction, but knew that any open defiance could lead to persistent nagging from Director Mary. The proverb "when in Rome, do as the Romans do" came to mind, but Director Mary's rules were excessively tyrannical. I need to use the restroom. To go to the bathroom, one must always say this phrase to get permission. I wanted to argue, let people use the bathroom freely, but with the physical urgency, I couldn't resist. After finishing my first allowed restroom visit, I was returning to my department when my cell phone rang. It was a call from the headquarters, so I answered it in the corridor. Hello. Yes. However, so focused on the conversation, I didn't notice someone behind me. Ending the call and turning around, I was startled to see a woman, about 45 years old, glaring at me with a fierce expression. How rude to be startled by the sight of your director. I glanced at her employee badge, and it read Director Mary. This was the worst possible way to meet, and my voice trembled in dismay. My apologies. This must have been our first meeting. It seemed she had just returned from her business trip. You're new here, right? Were you on the phone during work hours? She confronted me aggressively. I was speaking with the headquarters. They called me. Though I was older, she was the director. Her reputation as a feared figure meant I had to choose my words carefully to avoid trouble. From headquarters? Or were you just slacking off, old man? No, not at all. I assure you. Despite my earnest explanation, she seemed unconvinced, scrutinizing my face and snorting in disdain. Don't think you'll be coddled just because you're old. Director Mary left me standing there as she walked away briskly. Her return from the trip made the workplace atmosphere even heavier. When a young employee made a mistake, her hysterical yelling resounded, treating everyone like slaves. Due to being a rookie here, I was even assigned to clean the restrooms and started coming in early every day. Director Mary, who treated employees like slaves and enjoyed feeling like a queen, was more dangerous than the rumors suggested. My anger towards her grew day by day. A few weeks after arriving at the branch, Director Mary asked me the reason for my demotion. The reason? Well, in truth, President Tammy hadn't given me a clear reason either. Unable to give a frivolous answer, I vaguely dodged the question. Was it the president's decision? When I responded, Director Mary burst into loud laughter. Did you do something to offend the president? She must really dislike you. Her mocking laughter only increased my irritation. However, Director Mary, oblivious to my feelings, wore a sickening smile. Demoted at your age. You must be quite incompetent. Her accusation of incompetence ignited a surge of anger in me. I take offense to being called incompetent. Demotion is for the incompetent, isn't it? What's wrong with calling an incompetent person incompetent? After looking down on me, Director Mary left briskly. A few days later, One morning, as I was heading to the office, I received a message from my wife. Surprisingly, she was at the company, asking if I could meet her at the entrance. I hurried there. There she was, waving at me. I rushed over and, making sure no one else was around, asked her, "Why did you come so suddenly?" She innocently replied that she wanted to surprise me. A surprise? I'm at work. I was really startled when I got your message. Relieved it wasn't an emergency, I let out a sigh of relief. In the relaxed moment, I realized I had dropped the formal language, but my wife told me not to worry about it. I've always been surprised by my wife's actions, sometimes admiring her boldness, other times finding it stressful. If Director Mary sees here, I'd be in big trouble. Director Mary sees what? Director Mary approached from the entrance of the company, looking puzzled as she walked towards us. Encountering her at such a terrible time, I felt a chill run through my chest. "What are you doing here? You've finished the documents I ordered yesterday, right? I plan to finish them before lunch." "Before lunch?" I said, "Get it done by tomorrow morning. Don't change things on your own." Being scolded in front of my wife was utterly humiliating. But it was Director Mary who had given me the instruction to prepare the documents after work hours yesterday, forcing me to come in early today. Moreover, she was now changing her story. "Director Mary, you said yesterday, it's fine if it's done by the day after tomorrow. That's not what you promised." "What? Are you saying I'm wrong? Since when did an old man like you start talking back?" Director Mary's eyes narrowed in anger at my rebuttal, taking a high-handed stance. Changing her instructions and then refusing to admit fault was a bad habit of hers. Moreover, she had a strong belief in her infallibility and tended to push responsibility onto those beneath her. This had become clear from numerous interactions since my transfer to this branch. "Anyway, stop wasting time here and get back to work." Her yelling echoed in the entrance, and as the target of her anger, I hunched over. My wife, standing in front of me, blinked rapidly, looking at me with concern. Trying not to worry her, I forced a smile. Is this lady someone you know?" I thought she was a part-timer or something. It seemed that Director Mary had mistaken my wife for a part-time employee, observing her from behind. I hadn't introduced her yet. "This is my wife." As my wife turned around and smiled to Director Mary, the director's response was far from pleasant. "You, bringing your wife to the office? How cozy. But this is not a dating spot." Director Mary, after being introduced to my wife, shouted at me, her face turning red with anger. I recalled hearing from employees that she was still single and had an unsuccessful streak in matchmaking, losing 50 times. Knowing that I, whom she looked down upon, was married seemed to have wounded her pride. "How disgusting for an incompetent old man like you to be all lovey-dovey." She looked at me with disgust, as if she had seen something repulsive, and then pretended to vomit, letting out a heavy sigh. My wife, seeing the situation, stepped in. "I came here on my own accord. My husband is not at fault." But Director Mary scoffed at my wife's attempt to defend me. "Even your wife is amount to nothing." Hearing those words, I was momentarily speechless. "Excuse me, what did you just say?" "Meaning, an incompetent person suits another incompetent person." Director Mary looked at us and burst into loud laughter. As she laughed, a sound like a pig's squeal escaped her, and she quickly covered her mouth. Being insulted by such a vulgar woman about my wife made my blood boil. "Director, you're laughing at the wrong person." "Huh?" My wife slowly turned around. At that moment, Director Mary's mouth dropped open, her face turning pale. "What? Why, how could this be?" She was visibly shaken, struggling to grasp the situation. "Why is the president here?" My wife, or rather, Tammy, smiled quietly. Unbeknownst to Director Mary, she was the CEO of our company. Having silently listened to the conversation between me and Director Mary, Tammy now spoke for the first time. "Is there a reason I need to sneak into my own branch office?" Contrasting Tammy's calm demeanor, Director Mary was flustered, her mouth opening and closing in confusion. "But your last names are different. I can believe you and Ken are married." "I use my maiden name for business purposes. We married after the company was established, so we use different surnames professionally." Tammy continued speaking, her smile unwavering. "My husband, who is under your supervision, has been quite the topic, hasn't he, Director Mary? Caught off guard, Director Mary could only manage an awkward, forced smile. Around me, my wife always had a gentle demeanor, but at work, she was a dignified and commanding CEO. That's why I, too, made it a point to use formal language with her during work hours. So, the reason I'm here, Tammy continued, is that I came to hear Ken's report in person. Report. Director Mary quickly turned to me. Yes, I had assigned Ken the task of scouting this branch under the guise of a demotion. Scouting. Indeed, I had been assigned by Tammy at the headquarters to investigate this branch. The purpose was to conduct a covert assessment. Why our branch? There's nothing wrong here. Director Mary desperately tried to assert her innocence. There were anonymous reports sent to the president at the headquarters, alleging rampant harassment at this branch. Several months ago, an anonymous report had reached Tammy, indicating that a wave of employee resignations at this branch might be due to harassment by Director Mary. Tammy wanted to verify if these harassment claims were true, but sending a young employee could be mentally taxing, and a veteran might raise suspicion. That's where I, her trustworthy husband, came in. After my demotion, I had been reporting back to Tammy about the incidents I witnessed and the general atmosphere at the branch. From my observations and the stories from other employees, it became clear that Director Mary was the cause of the numerous resignations. The workplace environment has significantly deteriorated due to the director's harassment. Now that there was no need to hide my true purpose, I stopped pretending to be submissive and looked Director Mary straight in the eye. Revealing my true role, she looked bewildered but returned my gaze with anger. Getting bold just because the president is here is cowardly. And don't just assume I'm the cause of the problem. No, it seems you were causing trouble even before you came here, back when you were still a manager. This was before she assumed the current position. She was a manager at another branch, where a female colleague had been compelled to resign because of her alleged habitual bullying and harassment. This information was obtained through inquiries with other employees. Indeed, there was a female employee among her peers who developed depression and resigned. I have discreetly contacted her to confirm the facts. Director Mary had apparently been intimidating her subordinates and hiding the credit for their work for a long time. I've also reported your oppressive behavior towards the employees and surveillance-like actions while you were on business trips. That pet camera will be confiscated. I never ordered anyone to monitor their subordinates. As we confronted Director Mary, she grew increasingly pale and her lips trembled. I was confident that if we pressed a little more, she would give in. I spoke firmly. Please apologize to those you've troubled. A severe penalty will soon be imposed on you. Tammy glared at her sternly. Even though she was calm, she must have felt deeply upset about her employees being harmed, perhaps even more than I did. I hoped that Director Mary would acknowledge her wrongdoing and accept her deserved punishment. I realized that a crowd had formed around us, with President Tammy at the entrance. Employees who didn't know what was happening were looking over at us. Among them were members of the sales department, their faces tense. Frustrated by Director Mary's silence, I urged her again to reflect on her actions. Your silence won't erase your guilt. You should go to the sales department and apologize to everyone. At this, Director Mary suddenly looked up. I haven't harassed anyone. She glanced around nervously and then put her arm around the shoulder of a nearby young employee. I'm kind to everyone, right? Under her pressure, the employee nodded while trembling. See, he also says I'm not at fault. So, I am innocent. Director Mary smiled, but the young employee's face was clearly strained, trembling slightly, and clearly looked coerced. He is visibly shaking. Please let him go. When I urged her to release the employee, Director Mary glared at me. Why are you suddenly so bold? It doesn't matter if you're the president's husband. I am a clean and innocent person. Her shrill voice echoed through the entrance. I had heard her hysterical yelling so many times before. Being yelled at so closely often left a ringing in my ears and made me dizzy. I shook my head to clear it. So, you claim you haven't committed any harassment, Director. I've said it many times. Persistent men are disgusting. Tammy reacted subtly to her words. Director Mary, you shouldn't become so emotional. Losing your reason only hurts yourself and others. Tammy said, remaining utterly calm. Why is the wife of such a man the president? Seemingly frustrated by Tammy's position, she couldn't argue further, glaring at me resentfully. Anyway, I am innocent. All the allegations are fabricated by my subordinates to defame me. Still refusing to admit to any harassment, Director Mary stood her ground. So, I decided to reveal my ace card and took out a voice recorder from my pocket. This is a voice recorder. I have been recording conversations at work. Director Mary's face turned from pale to beet red at the sight of the recorder. Wiretapping is malicious. President, this deceitful man is the one who should be condemned. Tammy sighed, looking exasperated. I gave Ken this voice recorder. It's to verify if the evidence is genuine. What did you say? If you have a problem, Director, you can address it to me, his wife. No, that's... Director Mary faltered, seemingly unable to confront the company's top executive with the same bravado she showed to subordinates. Thanks to Ken's diligent reports, we understood that you were the cause of the issues. That's why I came here. Tammy stepped forward, her tone no longer gentle as when she spoke with me, but sharp and assertive. Her voice was cold, directed at someone she had clearly identified as an adversary. Do you have anything else to say? I remembered everything Director Mary had done to me. Each action was a cruel violation of respect and decency. For the sake of those who had been hurt, she needed to face appropriate consequences. You called me an incompetent old man and treated your subordinates like slaves. You'll have to face the consequences of your actions. Our combined stance, along with the gathered employees who had witnessed everything, focused intense scrutiny on Director Mary. Gradually, she began to sob. Upon closer inspection, large tears welled up in her eyes, and she sniffled repeatedly. I'm so sorry, she finally uttered, her voice choked with emotion. Director Mary's apology and subsequent breakdown were met with a mix of emotions from everyone present. She suddenly collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her face. I've been under so much stress being a director. I took it out on everyone else. She sobbed, dabbing her nose with a handkerchief, smearing her makeup. You're the president. Surely you'll understand the immense pressure of holding a managerial position. She attempted to garner sympathy from Tammy, but Tammy's expression remained unchanged. It seems we may have given you a role too burdensome for you, Tammy replied calmly. Yes, exactly. When I was promoted from manager to director, the pressure was overwhelming. Feeling encouraged by Tammy's response, Director Mary continued her act, trying to evoke more sympathy. I've been trying so hard, but everyone treats me like the villain. It's unfair. Then, I will remove you from the managerial position and assign you to a rank-and-file employee position. Yes. Wait, what? Director Mary, initially responding energetically, quickly realized the implications of Tommy's words and paused, asking for clarification in disbelief. If you're demoted, you'll be freed from the responsibilities of a managerial position. However, your salary will be about the same as a new graduate, Tammy said with a slight smile. Director Mart broke into a cold sweat. Director Mary, realizing the implication of being demoted to a level below her subordinates. For someone with as much pride as hers, this was an unbearable outcome. She quickly changed her tune, pleading weakly with Tammy. No, actually, I'm willing to accept the challenges of being a director. Oh, really? Then as a director, take responsibility for your actions and words, Tammy firmly stated, embodying the authority of a president. At this, employees from the sales department approached and collectively began to denounce Director Mary. We've been subjected to harassment by her. Our colleagues who resigned were all mentally and physically affected by her actions. Clearly, they all harbored strong feelings of resentment towards her. What's this? Ganging up on me, making me out to be the villain. Facing revolt from her subordinates, Tammy made her final decision. We'll discuss Director Mary's appropriate punishment at the next executive meeting. Until then, you will be on suspension. What? Does this mean I'm dismissed, President? However, Tammy didn't answer Director Mary's question and began to leave the company. At least tell me if I'm fired or just demoted, Director Mary called out in desperation, seeking clarity on her fate. Director Mary, trying to chase Tammy, stumbled and fell to the floor. Despite her crying, no one came to her aid. and everyone ignored her, returning to their respective duties. Due to the evidence and testimonies, Director Mary was disciplined and dismissed for her harassment actions. She also faced lawsuits for emotional damages from the employees who suffered under her. Some of these employees had resigned but were still suffering from the psychological effects of her harassment, preventing them from rejoining society. They too demanded substantial compensation. However, Director Mary refused to pay, arguing that their inability to rejoin society was their own weakness, led to a legal battle, which she lost due to the overwhelming evidence against her. Consequently, she was ordered to pay over $135,000 in total compensation. Outraged and now jobless, burdened by her debts, she resorted to targeting wealthy men in desperation. She didn't work and spent more time on matchmaking, desperately seeking a high-income partner, but was continually rejected. Even when Director Mary finally met a man close to her ideal, she was emphatically rejected and returned to square one. Eventually, her matchmaking attempts exceeded 100, and she became known in the circle as the woman who proposes marriage at a glance, laughed at behind her back. Still, she didn't give up on her dream of marriage and debt repayment, likely continuing to attend matchmaking events even today. However, her unpleasant character led to frequent troubles, and she was soon facing the possibility of being banned from these events, pushing her further away from marriage. As for me, having successfully completed my mission, I returned to the headquarters HR department. President Tammy also seemed relieved, showing a peaceful demeanor. Having been at the branch, we hadn't had much time together as a couple recently. Now that I was back at headquarters, I thought of inviting Tammy to dinner tonight. When I suggested dining out after work, she was visibly surprised. It's usually her who does the inviting, so it was unusual for me to make the first move. But after her initial surprise, she smiled happily. I replied with a smile, "I'm glad the surprise worked.